How's it going, everyone? This is Zflex and welcome back to another A Producer's Approach. So in this video we're going to be looking at JINXSPR0's song Generation Bounce on Argofox. So basically the typical structure for these videos, if you guys haven't seen, is that there's a intro and personal backstory section which I start off with. After that I do a breakdown and analysis section where I kind of go more into the analysis of the video and the song, and then after that there's an outro section where I kind of just sum up all my opinions about the song and what I think about what I hear in the song. So let's start with the intro section. So this is JINXSPR0 song Generation Bounce. The song was released on Argofox back in December 2018, so let's see, that's almost 3 years from now. And basically JINXSPR0, as you guys have seen, is a regular commenter on my videos, and he's a buddy of mine through the Argofox label. Personally, I've released a few songs on Argofox and have been promoted there in the past, but basically, you know, JINXSPR0 has been pretty nice in commenting on all my A Producer's Approach videos, or at least most of them. So I figured, you know, I'd pay the courtesy forward and do an APA video for his song Generation Bounce. And just a little bit of backstory about this song for me is I actually used his song Generation Bounce in one of my own personal mixes. I believe it's on my main channel and it's the Argofox Mix 2, I believe. I think I used this song in transitioning into another house song, but I'll kind of get more into that later where we kind of break down the song. But basically I'm familiar with this song Generation Bounce, and from what I've seen on Argofox and some of his other releases, personally for me this is my favorite release from him, just because there's like a pretty nice balance in between kind of orchestral string sounds kind of mixed in with like an EDM drop, so like the two of them together kind of mesh pretty well together. So overall, this is a song I believe in the future house genre. Personally, I'm not really good with a lot of the subgenres. I know a few subgenres in certain different EDM genres, but there's so many different subgenres that have been added that I can't even keep track anymore. So I believe this song might fall under future house. I don't exactly know what makes future house different than progressive house, big room house, or just regular house. So if you guys want more of a breakdown, maybe, you know, JINXSPR0 can elaborate in the comments section what the difference of those genres are, because personally I don't really know what the difference is. I just kind of know the difference between like progressive and big room because they're pretty different. But with like future house, I'm not too familiar with the genre, so definitely not in my wheelhouse. But all I know is that for most house music, they all are within the 128 BPM range. So I'm pretty sure, actually I know the song is in the 128 BPM range. So overall, this is JINXSPR0's song Generation Bounce, released on Argofox. And now we'll start with the intro of the song and the breakdown. Cool. So just with this intro section, from what I noticed, there's a more standard 4/4 percussive rhythm beat. There's kind of like this really kind of high pitch kind of sound. It almost sounds like a female singer singing like a certain note, or maybe it's like a really high pitched synth sound. It's kind of like a one-shotted sound with the vocal chops and then the piano kind of just playing the root note of the chord progression, playing a chord, kind of just introducing that section into the intro. And it's pretty cool. I like the rhythm in this, you know, intro section percussion. It gives a little bit more life than, you know, some of the other songs you've heard with the more standard and traditional house intros of just like a kick and a snare. I think with his song he has more of like a kick on one and then a clap on two. So if I remember correctly, mostly through the song, he doesn't really use a snare until like the build-ups. The percussion sound is mostly like a kick, a clap, and then some hi-hats. So, and maybe some other percussionary sounds like you hear in this section here to add a little more rhythm to these sections. So it's a little more complex. There's a little more texture and layers to the percussion rhythm. So that's pretty cool. So let's get back into it. All right, so it's pretty cool. Before that transition, there was kind of a sub drop playing with some percussion kind of transitioning, and then the piano plays the kind of chord progression. There's kind of that one shot kind of really kind of high frequency sound, and then you kind of have the vocal chops playing as well. And then there's also just kind of the atmosphere of the overall intro section, kind of, building the kind of emotional kind of scape of the song. So kind of the string orchestral atmosphere and kind of tone of the direction of the song. So it's pretty cool. You kind of understand like, okay, like right off the bat, like this is going to be a little bit different than your mainstream song. Like there's going to be a little more orchestral instruments being used in the song, so that's definitely pretty cool. So now there was a percussion kind of transition into the break section here. Kind of a interesting little kind of transition. It's pretty fast, but it's pretty cool too. It's just doo-doo-doo. Like it was pretty fast, so that's pretty cool. Kind of like that transition myself. So let's get back into this break section. Alright, so basically in this section, there's the piano chords being played. Well, in the first part, the kind of arp, there's kind of like an arp sound that's introduced. There's some strings that are playing kind of like as pads and acting as like chords, pads, adding that atmosphere and ambiance into this section. There's also kind of that high pitch sound as well that kind of one shots in, and then kind of lower in volume there's kind of like a kind of vocal chop sound. It's lowered and it sounds like it has a lot more reverb. It sounds like it's more of like a background vocal chop kind of noise, just to add some extra texture into this section, since for the first part of the section there's no percussion, and then later it kind of adds the clap section, and the clap kind of comes on the 3. So if you think of like a halftime dubstep rhythm, the kick is on 1 and then the snare is usually on 3. Here he doesn't have a kick playing at all, and he has like a clap playing on that 3rd beat, kind of to keep a rhythm of some sort going. So that's really cool. And then I think when the clap comes in, the piano chord also comes in as well. Just the piano kind of playing the chord progression that's the kind of string instruments are playing. And overall, this section kind of, has that very orchestral kind of movie trailer kind of vibe, where, you're kind of building kind of the epic scene of what this break section is. And to me, it kind of is like a very kind of uplifting, peaceful, kind of spacey type vibe you get from this really kind of more orchestral, melodic section, where most of the emphasis is mainly on like the orchestral kind of chords and pads and kind of that feeling. So this is definitely one of my favorite parts of the song. I mean, I like both break sections, but like I just like these parts where, you really kind of get that orchestral feeling for the song, and you kind of feel kind of like some type of emotion, or you kind of can visualize some type of, visual space from this section of the song. So at least for me, this is probably like my favorite section, along with the second break, the second orchestral section within the song. So definitely really cool, and a really good use of sounds, and really good emphasis on kind of the chords and the pads and the piano. So we'll get back into the song now. Alright, in this section he has the claps come in a little more consistently, but he kind of has the pianos playing along with some of the strings, and then having the vocal chop have a little bit more emphasis. And then I think there's also an ARP sound as well, but it sounds like a different ARP sound, or if it is the same ARP sound, it's playing like a different melody or ARP in this sense. I'm not exactly sure. The sound almost sounds a little bit different than the one playing previously, but this part's just kind of like, a little extra space to, give some space between like the build up and kind of the break section. It's kind of like that intermediary kind of break section in between, which is a really nice touch, because again, it kind of, adds the transition, like slowly transitions, with like not an abrupt really flow. It's just kind of building on that orchestral momentum, and then slowly adding in certain sounds to lead into the build. So definitely really cool, and we'll get back into the song now. Alright, so that was the build section. That came shortly after that section, the claps being introduced. The claps kind of transition and switch into a snare sound, and then the snare kind of consistently plays more. You notice that the kind of bass pluck sound, that's more of JINXSPR0's more unique sound designed pluck sound. It kind of is introduced in this section, quite like some other songs that you guys have heard, where the artist kind of previews that sound before the drop, so you kind of have a sense of what's to come in the drop, and it's not so sudden when you kind of hear his pluck sound in the drop section. You kind of get like a preview almost, in a sense, to leading into the drop, so you're not so surprised when you hear those songs when it drops. There's kind of like a nice smooth transition in. And then also, in this build up, there's more of like a snare build up. It's traditional and a little bit unique at the same time. So he kind of has a normal kind of snare build up where the snare slowly builds up, and then it goes higher and higher, goes faster and faster. But his is a little bit different, where it almost sounds like he has the snare either pitched or on a, like he wrote it in MIDI notes, where he could kind of fluctuate the either note notation or kind of the pitch of the snare sound, and goes kind of up, and then it kind of goes down, then kind of goes back up again, which is pretty unique. I haven't heard that type of snare drop in many songs, so that's definitely something for me to kind of keep in mind of, that could be used as a drop, because he kind of has it build up, and instead of some of the other songs that we reviewed having a just kind of a gap of space, or maybe a vocal sample within that gap of space, he kind of has the snare going up into the higher pitch, going back down the lower pitch, and then kind of going back up into the higher pitch, kind of within that gap of space before the drop kind of comes in. So that's definitely a more interesting approach and more creative, unique approach to a drop section, using snares as their build-up percussion. And then in that section also, there is like a white noise kind of riser, just kind of rising up to give and build that tension before the drop. So pretty cool. And now we'll go into the drop section. All right, so that's the first drop. What you notice in the first drop is it sounds really good, but there's actually quite a few things going on. So in terms of rhythm wise, it's kind of just the kick and the clap, kick on one and then kick clap on two, kick on three, so and then a kick clap on four. So it's like a kind of a traditional 4/4 rhythm. In terms of percussion, I didn't hear any other hi-hats playing, so that gave more emphasis onto the kind of hi-hat, not the hi-hats, but the high frequency sounds. So from what I can hear is his unique pluck sound playing the chord progression, and then he has kind of a lead sound that also is kind of like a distorted pluck from what I kind of can gather, and that's kind of playing along with the chord progression. And then as well, way in the background, I'm not exactly sure if you guys are able to hear, but there's also different vocal chops playing as well. They're really kind of lowered down, but you kind of can hear them if you, I guess, can focus on some of the other sounds happening within the song. But that's just something I noticed. It sounds like JINXSPR0 lowered down the vocals and then added some, reverb and delay to them, and kind of used the vocal chops to fill in some of the spaces within the drop that, could use the vocal chops, which isn't a bad thing. It just adds an extra layer of timbre and just an extra, high frequency sound that also kind of helps the flow of this first drop. So that's definitely interesting to note. And then, halfway through this drop, he has a kind of nice percussion transition loop, almost like. And then, the same kind of lead and chord progression plays with the vocal chops happening. And then there's kind of a percussion transitionary sound leading out into the break section. So this is definitely, a cool drop section. With as much as with as many sounds as it's going on in this section, it's surprising, at least to me, that there's no hi-hats, because usually hi-hats add extra flow. So that's pretty good that he was able to just kind of have minimal percussion to kind of have a pretty high and uplifting kind of flow to his drop section, because normally for me I add hi-hats to add more rhythm, so it seems like the song's moving faster, but in this case he didn't really need it because maybe the vocal chops in the background acted kind of as that high frequency sound to add to the flow instead of hi-hats. So definitely something a little bit more unique and different, but that's pretty cool. Definitely something cool to note. So we'll get back into this break section and analyze that. Alright, so for this section, I kind of like how the contrast is between the drop and this section. So this section is almost like a calm response section. So you kind of have the vocal chop play, and then you have like the kind of the chord, piano chord play. So you kind of, I think, have the piano chord play first, and then the vocal chop kind of plays, and then you kind of hear that gap. So it gives way more emphasis in this section between the piano playing the chords and the vocal chops. And for the vocal chops, like you can hear like the reverb and delay, since there's not like there aren't really any other sounds playing, so there's like really two main focus sounds playing, so you kind of hear all the effects for both the piano and the vocal chop. And it's a really nice use of spacing. It's also a really creative use of a call and response within this section. Definitely a very unique approach to doing call and response, but it's a really old school technique, so I like how it's really utilized in this section. And also in the background, there's kind of like a reversed kind of vocal loop, or not a loop, but like a sample, maybe kind of like a reverse tail to a vocal, kind of introducing the vocal sound. As you guys heard in the Longest Road remix, Vice Tone did that a lot with the vocals, where they would just take like the first letter or word, like kind of cut out that sample, reverse it, and put a lot of reverb on it. I kind of hear that in the background of this section, kind of leading into the vocal chops every once in a while within this section. So definitely another nice touch for the song in terms of this section. So for as little as what's going on in this section, the balance of the sounds and the emphasis of the sounds are really good. So definitely really cool. And we'll just keep continuing with this break section. All right, so that section was really cool. There's a introduction of that kind of ARP lead playing again, and then the clap kind of comes in on every kind of third beat for a 4/4 rhythm. And I also noticed, like, in the piano chords, it almost sounds like there's another sound playing along with the piano chords that has a lot more sustain, because it kind of sounds like the piano chords are being played, and then there's another sound kind of, you know, in the background of it, kind of drawing out and holding the sustain of that chord progression. So I don't know if that's the piano sound itself or another sound underneath that's like a layered sound, but it's a nice touch to give like more emphasis onto the sustaining chord of the chord progression. So definitely really cool. And then you kind of hear kind of a white noise riser here, and then it kind of transitions into the next kind of drop or build up to the drops, the second drop section. So we'll listen to that right now. All right, so in this kind of build up into the drop, it's pretty similar in terms of the structure of the build up. It's the same kind of snare rhythm, which is really cool. I mean, I do that in a lot of songs. You know, if the first drop or the first build up in the first section works before the first drop, like sometimes or a lot of the times I get lazy and just copy paste that, you know, build up, because for me, if it works in the first drop, then it'll probably work in the second drop and have kind of the same effect too. But if you noticed throughout these videos, sometimes, you know, giving some variation in between the first build up and the second build up can have like a, you know, more impacting effect on the song and on the drop itself. So it's really more of a creative choice for a producer. It depends how creative you want to be and how lazy, I guess, you want to be. So that's probably my best description. But the structure is very similar to the first build up. The pluck sounds for his more unique kind of bass pluck sounds, at least this build up, don't seem to be as apparent as maybe the first build up, at least to me from what I'm hearing right now. But is pretty cool also into the transitioning percussion sounds, that he had the clap, the transitionary percussion, and then it kind of just switched straight into the snare. So that's definitely pretty cool there. And like the first build up, he also had a white noise kind of sound to help bring some tension into the drop. So we'll listen to the second drop now, and yeah. All right, so this second drop is a little more interesting. So the first drop, in terms of, you know, both the drops, the first drop had that vocal chop playing in the background, And for the second drop, you actually don't hear that vocal chop in the background at all. There's more emphasis this time on the lead sound and the bass pluck sounds, which is quite interesting to me. I guess it's just more of a personal choice for JINXSPR0, maybe not to add the vocal chops in because maybe they weren't necessary in the second drop. So that's just something I kind of heard off the back of that. And at least to me, I think the chord progression changes a little bit in terms of maybe a note or two. I could be wrong, but at least from what I heard on my end, I think there kind of was a change in the chord progression, which would be kind of nice to add a little bit of variation to the chord progression. But overall, you know, the bass pluck sounds are pretty similar. That lead sound was pretty similar, but in the transition, in the middle of the drop, there's kind of like a reverse kind of vocalish sounding, like kind of playing as well, leading up into the percussionary transition in the drop. So that's pretty interesting as well. For as many kind of percussion transitions there are in the song, this section after the drop kind of transitions quite fast for at least what I was expecting, which isn't a bad thing. That's just more of a personal choice. It's just a little bit different than what I expected, since he was using a lot of different drum fills and had a little bit more of a gap in between the transitions. But sometimes, you know, a quick transition is pretty good as well when you're just trying to get to the outro and kind of finish off the song. So definitely kind of an interesting point to note out just within this song. So let's listen to the outro now. Alright, so that was the outro. He has the vocal chop kind of come back in. Then he has the bass plucks kind of sound, just play the root note of the chord progression. And then those two kind of play out. And then he kind of has a more interesting percussion sound playing again, which is pretty cool. Again, like the intro section, there's a more interesting rhythm in this song's intro and outro section than in most other house songs. So that's pretty cool in itself. And then he kind of has a transitionary kind of percussion sound. But what I might have forgot to mention in the song is he actually includes a lot of sub drops. So within that section of the outro, he kind of has like a sub drop there where you kind of hear the doom kind of sub bass sound, which is also a nice transitionary effect. I like to use that sound when I'm transitioning, building up in build-ups and then after a drop. So those, like a sub drop is usually like a nice kind of a transitionary sound to pair with, you know, a percussion transition sound. So overall, that is Generation Bounce by JINXSPR0. So this song's really good. As I mentioned earlier, this song, I have a lot of points that I do like about it. So I like the kind of balance between the orchestral break sections and the kind of EDM house drop in the song. It's like a really nice balance for an intro and outro for like a more standard traditional house song, like those 30-second kind of intros and outros. I like how he added a little more of a percussive groove in those sections to make those intro sections interesting, because in some songs they're not really that interesting when you're listening to them. The design of those 30-second intros is more for mixing. So personally, when I was mixing his song Generation Bounce in my Argofox Mix 2, I believe, I was mixing this in with another 128 BPM house song. So having his song a little more structured was pretty nice, because then I could beat match the song a little bit easier to the next, you know, house song that I was mixing in. So that's where structure definitely can have a more positive effect. But if an artist feels like making a song with a more free-flowing, non-traditional structure, that's not bad either. It's just if you're gonna try and mix that song, it's a little bit harder for a DJ or someone that's not really used to mixing. It might be a little bit tougher for them to do than a song that's a little more structured, like Generation Bounce. So both a free-flowing structure and a more traditional structure have their plus and minuses, but it's basically up to the creator's choice. The use of vocal chops in this section is really nice. I like how there was more of an emphasis on the vocal chops, and then even when there wasn't a huge emphasis on them, you could kind of hear them. Except for that second drop, you don't hear it, which is kind of nice because you've kind of heard the vocal chops enough already that there was enough of a flow for that second drop to keep going. And that kind of mid-break section with the piano spacing with the vocal chops, kind of like having a call and response section, that section was really nice. Really gave more emphasis on the vocal chops and the piano chords. So overall, this is a really good song by JINXSPR0. If you guys haven't checked out his other songs, he has some other songs on Argofox and some not on Argofox. JINXSPR0, if I missed anything in your song, please let me know in the comment section. Again, this is kind of like my review from it on my end, but since you made the song, you might have a better idea of some of the sounds. So if anyone else also has any questions about some of the sounds used, feel free to ask JINXSPR0 in the comment section. I'm pretty sure he'll answer since he made the song and constructed and structured the rest of this song. So if you haven't listened to Argofox as well, check out their channel. They used to be a promotional channel, but now they're more of a label. So I have some songs on Argofox as well, so feel free to check those out if you want. But otherwise, I hope you guys liked this video. If you liked or disliked the video, please leave a comment. If you have any questions about the sounds that JINXSPR0 used in this song, feel free to leave a comment asking him as well. And Jinx, thanks for making such a great song. Generation Bounce is probably one of my favorite from your discography, so definitely keep up the good work. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys like the video, feel free to subscribe, and hopefully there'll be more releases sticking to my schedule on the Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday release. So look forward to more releases, everyone. All right, have a good one. Peace.